They tried bankrupting him. They tried seizing all of his property. They tried putting him in jail.
Yeah.
They tried killing him twice. And so from a worldly perspective, eye for an eye, Trump, when he gets into power, could, from a worldly perspective, repay evil for evil and get all of his enemies and shut people down and use the power that he has. But it's going to be a test of his character to say, what is he going to do? Is he going to do that, or is he going to dismantle the mechanisms for people to abuse the power in the future?
Yeah. All right, and we are back. The Unyielding podcast. We're talking about anything and everything from a Christian perspective. Today, again, we're down one man, so this kind of changes up things every once in a while. But I'm Mike, Spence, T, and Phil, and we're excited to talk about kind of just post-election type stuff. We're shooting this a couple days after the election results are in, and so let me pray and get us started. Father, we love you. We ask you, Lord, that you would be with us, God, that you'd use this podcast for your purposes to build your kingdom. We love you in Jesus' name. Amen.
Amen. Amen.
All right. So, like I said, we're just a couple days post-election, and I think generally we are, you never get everything you want, but there's a lot to be thankful for, a lot to be grateful for. And so I'm kind of curious for you guys, just how did you experience Tuesday night? It was, I know I was worried that we weren't going to get election results for days or weeks. And we got election results, at least in most of the big races, we got election results on the same night, which was pretty great. So where were you guys at Tuesday night? What was kind of going through your head as you were watching the election results come in?
Kamala, she died like a dog. I said, Kamala, don't cry. Yeah, I think, the day of, I was really, just praying and asking God for mercy and favor. Like we said before, we didn't deserve this as a country. We have a lot of national sins and blood guilt on us.
Yeah.
But God has shown us mercy in this.
Yeah.
And so, I was just praying for that. And, and as the numbers were coming in, obviously it just kept, after the first, after the first 2 hours, it looked like, okay, this is going to be good. But I didn't know it was going to be as crazy as it was, and also the map, when you look at states, that's one thing. But when you look at counties,
Right.
Mm-hmm.
it's amazingly red.
It said 92% of counties in the United States moved towards Trump.
Yeah.
So that's an overwhelming percentage of the electorate saying, here's how we feel, here's what we're thinking is going on.
Yeah, I wasn't very confident at all leading up to the election. The only real confidence I had was knowing that Laura Trump and James O'Keefe, they had their lawyers and their cameras out there, so any kind of funny business with ballots would or potentially could be caught. And then, leading up to the election, there was a couple of things going on, funny business. But same with Bo, I was just praying the whole time. And Tobias. They were both praying. But same with Tobias, just praying the entire time. And even as election results started coming in and it looked positive, like it was going to go Republicans' way, at the end of a movie when the bad guy dies and the last scene his finger moves.
Yeah.
I was waiting for that moment, just out of Pennsylvania, 40,000 ballots drop. I was waiting for that moment to happen.
Yeah.
It never did happen.
Yeah, I stayed up as late as I could just to
monitor the situation.
But the X, Twitter, right? That's huge. That was instrumental because even leading up to it, early voting, you could see people. He's saying, post anything you see that's suspicious.
Yeah.
And they were looking into it. They were, they got if a poll closed early and they weren't letting people in, they got some of them extended hours, and
Right.
So they actually were putting in, and Laura Trump putting in work.
Yeah.
Which is great.
Yeah.
My Tuesday experience was interesting because my home group meets on Tuesdays, and we're going through. I wish I would have brought Mark's book. We're going through the Kingdom Keys, unlocking the Kingdom, and in the book it gives you each chapter describes a principle that is a way to access and be in tune with how God's kingdom works. And we're on the second chapter that deals with displacement. And so I thought it was, we prayed as a group for our country, for the people. But we spent the time discussing displacement and how the kingdom principle of displacement works. And
so real quick, if you haven't read the book, the idea is nature abhors a vacuum, that there can't be nothing. And so something is going to exist until something more powerful drives it out. So one of the examples he uses in the book that is great is that light is more powerful than dark, right? So when you open your door at night, it's dark outside, it's light in your house. Darkness doesn't flood into your house, but light floods out because light overcomes the darkness. And so something is going to exist until something more powerful comes and pushes it out. And the idea for the kingdom being that God is the most powerful. And so the kingdom is going to drive out darkness or wickedness or evil when people get busy. And if it's like the principle that Jesus taught, that if the people of God lose their saltiness, then we get driven out, and so there's kind of like this battle going on there. I think that's generally the principle of displacement.
Yeah, and that was the nature of the conversation we were having. So like I said, we prayed and we were prayerful for the outcome we wanted in the elections, and all the elections, not just with Donald Trump. We were praying for all of them. And then the discussion was really meaningful because it doesn't end the conversation there, right? So as Christians, we have to be the salt, and we have to understand what that means going forward. So I think there's like a triumphantness that we felt after that day and that we were hopeful for. But then there was also a very sober, okay, well, displacement means there's things we have to be very intentional about thinking about and figure out how we move into those spaces, how we displace what's in there. It's kind of to your point, our nation isn't in a place where this one victory is okay, rest and just relax into it and everything's going to be fine. It could be, but we still have to be very intentional and thoughtful and purposeful about what we want to see the kingdom displace. So it was a interesting Tuesday night that chapter landed on, the night when the vote's taking place and all of that.
Yeah, and it's interesting, I think, that we spent a lot of time talking about the presidential election, and the reason is because that's really the only election that applies to everybody, right? It's the only election in our country that everybody is voting for one person. So we said there's so many other things that are downstream from that on our ballots, but as you go down the ballot, it becomes more and more personal to where every single person here lives. So that's why we talk so much about the presidential election, but there were so many other things that were on the ballot that were really important. So we had a Senate race here in California. We knew we were going to lose that. But then we had several, from our church, we had 7 people who were running for different offices, and 6 of them won. So we won 6 of 7
That's awesome.
races from our little, it was, a handful of school districts and a city council spot and a couple different things that we were really pushing for. And so there's a lot to be thankful. As we kind of saw all the election results coming in and seeing how much the pendulum was swinging. It wasn't just nail biting. What was he down to? But it was like I said, 92 counties of all 92% of all counties moved towards Trump, was just a huge victory and one to be really thankful for and grateful for. I was watching, you had talked about thank you for God's mercy. We were kind of flipping back between streams. I was with some friends. We were playing this game. I kind of modified a drinking game. We had a cup and you had to put a quarter in, and every time a list of things happened, you had to pass it. And one of the lists was every time they talk about a demographic, black voters or white voters or college educated voters or rural voters, you have to pass the cup. And then once they call a state, you get to take all the quarters that are in there. And for a long time, we were watching the Charlie Kirk stream. It was on YouTube, and it was him and a bunch of his organization. They were kind of going through and just looking at the counties and looking how the votes were coming in. And it was so weird because the cup almost never got passed. And then we switched over to CBS, NBC, MSNBC, Fox News. And it was it was just the quarters were going up because they were so hyper focused on racial demographics and separating people out into these different groups and commenting about how Latino men are coming in strong in the exit polls and for conservatives, and black women are voting this way. And it was just so much of that it really just was eye-opening of something we already knew, but it was just an actual physical representation of how like even in the coverage of the election, they're trying to pit us against each other. They're trying to break us into this kind of identitarian politics. And it was so crazy how it was just an obvious display.
In the whole cycle leading up to this, and then in those moments where people, their feedback is this identity group feedback. Just for me, it's been one of the hardest things to tolerate. It's just I don't want to care at that level. I think,
but the juxtaposition was so clear. It's like they would call Charlie Kirk a racist and xenophobic.
He's the only one not focused,
a bigot, and they don't care. They're not talking about it. They're just
Solomon was up. He stayed up the entire time watching the election. And he's like, hey, the votes are in for. He was into it, but
how old is he?
He's 9.
9, yeah.
But he said they're like, white. He's a white. He's like white people. Like they're starting to go to the demographic. He's all white people. I'm all He's all. Like he was like confused, like why? What does that have to do with the vote for the election? I'm like, well, they like to break it down based on And then I explained to him like we're coming into a place of we've been in a place of tribalism, where you vote. A lot of people feel like they vote and they stick to the people that look like them, and it's based on skin color, and it's tribal. Doesn't make you can look across at another person, and instead of saying what could this other tribe have a value, you say that's not us. They're not them, we're not them, they're not us, we're not like them.
I don't know when it was before, it might have been the week before, but Obama was at this. It was a small little, like when you see the video, it's not a huge thing. It's a small little rally, whatever the gathering, and he's making this comment that if you're a black man and you won't vote for Kamala as a black woman, and his whole point was that you're doing something wrong as a part of your blackness. And I'm repulsed by that. I don't understand how the former president of the United States of America, with all of the demographics it has to represent, one can publicly articulate that comment. It hurts.
One thing you see too, unfortunately, a lot of the black culture and the black vote, it did go, she's a black woman, even though, kinda. But she's a black woman, we got to vote for her. But and it used to be, it's BIPOC, right? It's people of color. But 55% of Latino Hispanic men voted for Trump. Something like 65% of Native Americans. And guess what they do now? Oh, turns out they're not with us either.
They're racist.
We used to be all together, all the brown people, all the Hispanic, the oppressed Native Americans. Oh, you voted for Trump? You're racist.
It's Latino white supremacy.
Misogynistic.
It's not, it's interesting though, it's not black culture. It is inside of the leftist ideology to break people up by race, because here's why I know. I remember during Prop 8 when blacks came out in favor of traditional marriage in California, and they were like, oh, black people, now that they have their freedom, they don't care about the freedom of gays. It's like they're ready to
bounce on anyone.
Leftists are ready to pit anybody who violates and if you're a black person, or you're a woman, or you feel this pressure of I better not cross the line because then I'm out. Like they won't respect me. And as we're getting all these postmortems in where people are reflecting on what happened and how could Kamala Harris have lost, and it must be this vestigious racism in our country where people just could not bring themselves to vote for a black woman. People just, that was a bridge too far. They just could not vote for her because she's black or because she's a woman. It's misogyny. It's racism. And it's like, dude, you guys are absolute morons. Like, if you cannot tell that is not what's going on here in our country, then you are beyond foolish,
Well, and it's to your point, it's shifting the blame. Everybody else is wrong. I'm perfect. My ideas are perfect. And Latinos are racist and everyone else is misogynist. And that's the essential pit of a bad leader. They're not taking extreme ownership and not recognizing, what am I seeing wrong? What am I doing wrong? Where did I get my policies wrong? They refuse to have any introspection.
This girl Sunny on The View I was watching yesterday, Stephen A. Smith was on there. Actually, it was great, but it was this part was so infuriating. They were talking about what, are this many people uneducated? How come they can't get educated? How come they can't figure this stuff out? And Stephen A. Smith is like, well, they don't have the same access to news that we do. They're just trying to live their lives and survive, and they're not paying attention to, they're not as, and then she was like, well, how do we get these people educated? And I just thought, you are digging your ditch. Like, just keep digging. Just keep digging, because you will never win another election again, because you are as tone deaf and as arrogant in your loss as you were in your smugness when you guys had the White House and whatever. Like, you guys you're gonna ruin yourselves for the next, I don't know.
Yeah, well, the talking point that should be said, I wish Stephen A. Smith would have said it, is education and intelligence are not synonymous. You could be super highly educated and have masters and PhDs, but you don't even know what a woman is. You only define what
We've seen a lot of the most ignorant, wicked ideas come out of when we talk about education. I think we all have our college degrees in here. Do you have a master's? I have part of my master's done. Like we're not. Masters. You have masters. Hey, all right. I didn't know. I didn't remember. I didn't remember.
I don't even know if I should be proud of it.
And you have a lot of work experience, you know. But like,
he's got degrees on degrees.
Yeah, I know. Yeah, you got the certification, right, from the trade school.
7 years, dude. I mean, I don't have a degree from it.
Yeah, well, I can't knock it out.
Should be a doctor.
Same.
I can't.
You guys are in the same seminary.
Yeah, we're on the same. Right. We're on the same graduation track from seminary. But the point being that, you know, we are so. Like, this is not about education. Like, like Sonny and Stephen A. Smith. Yeah, you guys are indoctrinated by the system, but like, you guys are the ignorance is astonishing.
I think there are different segments though, because some people, they are honestly saying, how could people vote for Trump? And I think a lot of those people, some of those people are caught in they go to CNN, MSNBC, and TikTok for their news.
Yeah.
If those are the media sources you've used, then your picture of Trump, where this campaign is all about his persona and how he's brash and he's, uncouth and all these things. And it's all about that. And it's not about his policy. So some of those people would do very well finding actual broader news sources like things on X, Twitter, Daily Wire, Canon Plus, right? Some not legacy media.
Yeah.
Those people will be helped by that. Then there are another group who know what they're doing and what they're saying, and they actually want a different America.
Like, they're part of an elite machine.
Well,
it is trying to.
Well, even my sister or my wife was talking to someone the other day, and they were honestly like, how could you vote for Trump? And she was talking to this girl, and she's like, she said she realized in the conversation, oh, you actually do want a different America. Like, when I'm bringing up points, it's not that you've never heard this or you don't know where Trump stands. You do want trans rights over protection of children.
Yeah.
You do want protection of LGBTQ, gay, like, over anything else. That's not the America I want. So some people are, even it's not even the elites, the machine. It's some people actually are somewhat well informed and they want a different America. And that's a term. I'm very happy that this doesn't just feel like a drop in the bucket. It does feel like a turning point.
Yeah.
Well, which is also what I'm praying for.
To your point about the media, all these meltdowns we're seeing online of people crying and saying, I'm going to become a slave and they're going to round us up and it's going to be terrible. I mostly blame the media for all of this.
Right.
Because they're not being honest in their depiction of anything that the campaign stood for or wanted. And if they took 5 minutes of listening to a extended speech of Trump and what his vision for America was, they'd realize that all of their fears are nothing.
I still, pretty much every day scan the headlines at CNN and at Fox News, but generally most of my news consumption and where I'm getting informed from is happening on X, right? Like, and just different people I follow and different things going on. It's such a superior way of finding out information.
Yeah.
And I think you brought up something really interesting. One of the things that has happened over the last 4 years, or at least it's been happening for a long time, is conservatives getting themselves out of legacy media, mainstream media. It is so obviously biased. It is so obviously an agenda driven, the what do they call it? The communications department of the DNC. Like, it is so obvious how much of it is corrupt and how ignorant they are to their own things that when you look at people who are building things, so like you think about like the Rogan podcast, or you think about the Daily Wire, you think about Canon Plus, you think about these other organizations that are developing their own media voices, their own
Reputation.
spheres of communication and getting things out there, and how they've been really successful. Like that really is, we are going to see such a radical, we have seen, and we're going to continue to see such a radical change in the way that people receive their information and get it, that there's so many people that are just outside of the main, they're not going to be corruptible like that anymore.
Yeah, you know,
they're not going to be able to be, manipulated in that.
You know what's interesting too? What was super
Tucker
surprising?
Carlson, yeah,
Tucker
exactly.
Carlson, Epoch Times is
Yeah,
another good
Epoch
one.
Times, right?
But
Epoch Times is good because it evaluates stuff. It's like a news. So it's giving you both sides. It's not
Charlie
a podcast.
it's not podcast. It functions like a traditional news center, like a newspaper.
Yes, like that.
But when I read it, it's very hard to see bias.
Yeah.
But
Glenn Lowry has one. It's blanking on it, but he
always
he's
talks
something
about.
he's a person I really respect in his viewpoint on things. He's got one that he refers to that's similar to Epoch Times, but different, where it's news organization based, not a like Tucker Carlson's a little bit of a personality.
Yeah.
I think you get a lot of good stuff, but there is a difference with a podcast versus like a Epoch
Traditional, yeah. But one thing that was super surprising, Polymarket, they predicted everything that happened to a T, from Trump winning the election to Biden dropping out. They predicted that Biden was going to drop out of the presidency in March of 2024, well before the first debate. And half a dozen other things.
Is that polls or is that betting markets?
That's betting markets.
Yeah, okay, that's what I thought.
And so all these pollsters that are showing it neck and neck or even close totally got it wrong. So your point about dismantling the media machine and people not even trusting it, even this side of the whole pollster, CBS polls and NBC polls and Rasmussen and all these things, they got it wrong. It weren't even close.
It's great it's great to know that there's still a lot of common sense left.
Yeah.
Common sense first, and then pushing into even more Christian principles. But if we even just get common sense, which really is undergirded by Christian truth, but just seeing the common sense, there was one that was I think it was Starr County, somewhere along the border. You hear this?
Yeah.
Starr County has been Democrat since, I don't know how long.
1820 or something. Yeah.
Late 1800s. It's been Democrat with Trump.
Wow.
Because it's on the border and they're having millions of immigrants come across the border, causing obviously all sorts of issues.
Yeah.
They went Trump. They went Republican for the first time since the late 1800s.
Yeah.
It's common sense.
Yeah. And I think there's a lot of good, I think when we look back and we think about what are the things that made the difference here, I think Elon Musk was a huge part of making the difference. I think that him buying X even was a huge shift in just the landscape of what is, even what people thought was possible, in our country. I thought that was great. I think a really interesting trend to look at is some of those counties you're talking about, some of those Texas counties that flipped to Trump. People are trying to figure out, they're like, I don't understand. This is 78% Latinos that live here.
Right.
And for a long time, the thinking was that, Texas was going to be purple because it was going to be in the middle because of how many Mexicans are immigrating here and whatever. And now you see like, oh, those Latinos are actually starting to vote more in line with what their actual values are, their actual family values. And I think the black vote too, Trump got the biggest percentage of the black vote that any conservative, any Republican has gotten in the last like 50 years. So I think that even there, I think what you're going to see is, I think you're going to see some of these people that are breaking out of this lockhold that the Democrats have had on people of color. And I think what's interesting is as immigration has happened, it's become less of a Mexican or Latino issue. A lot of the people coming over are Chinese and Ukrainian. And I think if you're a Mexican who lives here, you're a black person who lives here, you think, I don't want Middle Eastern people crossing the border undocumented. I don't want Chinese people coming here undocumented. This is not an issue of Latinos. This is an issue of national security, national safety. And I think increasingly you're going to see some of that vote begin to shift and turn. And that's a pretty exciting thing to be able to see the way that Trump in 2016 got a larger percentage, in 2020 got an even larger percentage, and now in 2024 has gotten an even larger percentage of the votes of people of color.
I'm excited, man. I think the things we're already seeing, we see, Joe Saladin, the USDA, like who's a regenerative farmer who's amazing. You got people like RFK Jr., who's going to be heading up. Now, I disagree with him on some things.
Yeah.
But, have you seen the meme of, the current administration's idea of health, right? And it's, what's his name?
The Surgeon General.
Rachel Levine, a dude in a dress and a uniform versus this ripped old dude, RFK Jr.
Yeah.
It just is clear.
Yeah.
This is not healthy or good.
Yes.
This dude at least knows about something about health.
Yeah.
Simple.
Some of the things that I'm looking forward to, that have already happened. I don't know. Have you guys heard of the 4B movement?
Yeah.
Where women are no longer going to have sex with men for 4 years because they think abortion. And all these conservative guys online are like, yeah, that sounds fantastic.
They said,
stop sleeping around.
Yeah.
I agree to these terms.
Yeah.
This is not a flex.
They're telling each other
a whole point.
They're telling each other, you know what? From now on, we're not just going to have sex with random guys. We're going to make sure the guys align with our values.
Yeah.
And then we're not going to have sex. And we're not. Right. And then, now, get your values right. But yes, stop having random sex, which also leads to you stop having abortions at this rate.
I have to say,
it's working.
And I've talked with, I think all of you guys, but Mike and I were the other day talking. I do feel in this election cycle, I have lost the ability to see what is a joke or not. Like that to me would sound like that's a joke. Like they're making this commentary or joke. But there's so many things where it's been impressed upon me, like not to get my ideas or information from these outlets, because the symbols that they're representing are just so wild. Like the Rachel Levine is over health. I don't know how it's been kind of eye-opening to me, like how debauched things out, how crazy they are. I keep myself a little insulated from it. I don't watch it.
You got to hold your eyes open and look at it because it's so. You gotta take it in.
It's so.
You got to know what it is.
Well.
But
what do they do to you in the military, man?
if you see some of the videos of some of the girls who are saying this kind of stuff too, it's like
that's not gonna be difficult.
Yeah,
it's like take this. And it's no,
listen to me, boys.
Yeah,
and it's like, oh no, like
the women are cutting their hair off.
Yes.
Oh, I'm not. This luxurious hair. No, and
I'm gonna get fat. It's like, yeah.
It's like
I'm not fitting into your. I'm not fitting into your patriarchal system anymore. And it's like, okay, man, go for it.
One thing I brought
Become who you really are on the inside. And Douglas Wilson makes this point, and I think it's true, and this is gonna offend a lot of people. But what's on the inside ends up coming out, and what you end up getting is a lot of women who have embraced leftist ideology get hideous. Like they get ugly, purple hair, piercings. They begin to destroy their beauty, and you get the whole trad wife movement. A bunch of the people on the right, like you get people who want to embrace femininity. They want to embrace being, they recognize that it's good for a woman to be even externally beautiful, and they embrace those kinds of things. And like you start to see the physical manifestation of your politics or your belief system, your ethics come out on your physical appearance. And dude, it's totally obvious. You can walk into a coffee shop, you can walk into and see the barista and know exactly how you voted and what you think is important in life.
One reason I brought up RFK Jr. and Joe Salad and all that is this idea. I mean, and it really is kind of it's giving me an excitement and an expectation for this campaign, which this administration, I should say, they need to follow through. Yep. But they've got a lot of momentum right now, and Trump's already putting out statements about what he's going to do in day one. But the idea that we would find people in our nation who are doing actually an excellent job in their field of expertise, actual experts. This guy has a ranch that's thousands of acres he's producing, actually talk to American experts.
Not ivory white tower experts.
No. Yeah. And ask them what they think and say, can you help the rest of America?
Right.
Mind blowing.
Yeah.
But it makes a ton of sense.
It's so simple.
Well, one of the things,
practical expertise, not academic.
It's practical.
Here's one of the things that he said that I thought was, for whatever reason, had been lost on me. It hadn't occurred to me. He said, we're going to move these entire departments out of Washington into other parts of the United States of America. Okay. We need to remove the logjam of being in D.C., the corrupting influence of being in D.C., where you're around all these other politicians and all these other lobbyists. And we need to move you out into other parts of America where you can be around regular people who are the people who are voting for this country. And I just thought, like,
oh
really
yeah,
smart.
we should definitely do that. That's a great idea. And he talked about we're already moved I think it was like the Department of Agriculture to Colorado. Like we're doing all this kind of stuff to like break up this monopoly
Who
of
was saying that?
Trump.
Oh, okay. So Elon Musk was talking about that as well,
Yeah.
where he said we have 428 federal agencies. 428 federal agencies. We're only 250 years old.
Yeah.
That means every year we've been in existence, we've doubled
agencies.
two agencies. And so he was saying, and my perspective is, a lot of these federal agencies, you could just defer to the states.
Poof.
If
Yeah.
you want a Department of Education, you can have it. If you want a Department of Agriculture, you can have it. If you don't have to have it.
Well, they've been toying, and it's been really refreshing to hear them talk about efficiency and and I think it connects, for me, it connects with like, there's something about Christianity that's like principlistic, and it's simple, and like I think there's some elements of this campaign that give me some joy, because there is this, like, let's make it simple. Let's do moving all of that concentration of decision making out of Washington, D.C. It's not, you don't need a PhD. It's a simple solution that I think is another reason I have some hope. The principles that Donald Trump is running on are, and I think you can look at each policy and say, oh, it might feel different here, but he's bringing a principlistic approach that I think is galvanizing. And this is why, my opinion is, this is why there's such a spread of attraction towards it in all of these places, because I don't actually want to understand the tax code. The tax code is monstrous.
Mm-hmm.
I want it to be simpler. I understand it needs, to some extent, needs to be there, but eventually we're not, but it definitely needs to be shrunk down. And so there's something about
What you're saying about principles is true, though. It's it's the last 10% that everybody in life, I feel like, gets hung up on. Is these are my principles. This is what I believe. This is what I know is true. And then they start implementing those. And then that last part where it gets hard to live your principles.
Yeah.
And you reach something like the principle of splitting up these agencies, whatever. The principle is simple. Actually executing that does have some complexity.
Yes. Yeah.
Some people are going to lose their job.
Pain. Yeah.
There's going to be some pain.
Yeah.
But if you stick to the principle and you know that's true, and you don't let anything stop you from applying a principle that you know is good and true, that's it.
Well,
And it's a good thing. It's not an easy thing.
No, it is going to be complicated, but I'll give an example. Everyone that I've heard throw up criticism about Trump and what he wants to do with federal agencies is, their biggest example is the Department of Education. He's going to get rid of the Department of Education. And I challenge anybody out there who values the Department of Education, without Googling it, what does the Department of Education do? The federal Department of Education do? You do not have one clue. And you say, oh, they create academic standards. No, that's what regional accreditation bodies do. We went through this when we worked at a college. WASC did it. The interviews for accreditation, the Department of Education didn't do it. That regional accreditation body did it. I would love for you to challenge anybody. Tell yourself or ask yourself, what do they do? You don't know. And that's what a lot of these federal agencies are. You don't know what they do. They don't serve a great purpose. If they were gone tomorrow, you wouldn't know a difference.
I think I know what they do. I think their primary job is to distribute money, like federal tax dollars to different states for their education programs. And why can't a state do that?
Exactly.
Why can't just take the federal out of people's federal income tax?
It's so people can have jobs.
And make it creates a level of bureaucracy and then a level of strings that they can use to make you do what you want to do. So
And Elon Musk's taking over Twitter, getting rid of 80% of the workforce.
and Twitter works great.
And Twitter still works. It works better now.
Yes.
And so he's a perfect example of leadership and cutting waste.
And again, Elon Musk, I'll tell people, Elon Musk, he's a strange dude in some ways, right? There's some things I don't agree with.
Yes.
But in the areas that he is a genius, he is a genius.
Yes. Yeah.
He has done some amazing things. Does he have he's got a bunch of different babies, moms, and kids, and naming them XYZ, and that's some weird stuff, right?
Right.
But in the areas he's a genius, let's listen to him.
And we're hearing...
Dude is landing rockets back on Earth, and people would be like, Elon Musk, not impressed. I don't know what you're talking about.
It was
we have the dude is an American genius who wants to help our country. Let's let him do it.
It was like 4 years ago. They were like, we think we can reuse these rockets. We think we might be able to land them back on a big platform. It's like, yeah, right. There's no way you could do that. Now he's catching rockets. I mean, it's unbelievable. I do want to say, so maybe this transitions us a little bit. Like, what are you looking forward to in this next season, these next 2 years, next 4 years? What are some of the things you hope will happen? What are the things you think are most exciting?
Here's a big one. This is one we've said in our episode before the election. If you only voted for Trump for this reason, the idea of not pushing kids into a trans ideology to mutilate themselves, sterilize themselves, sexualize them at a young age, expose them to homosexual gay pornography and ideas. If that alone was why you're voting for Trump, and guess what? That's what he already put out a statement on.
Yeah, I saw it.
I mean, he's talking about protecting our kids from this. He's talking about allowing people that have had this perpetrated on them as minors to sue doctors. Good.
Yeah, right. Obviously, yes.
That is something I'm absolutely looking forward to, and what I'm looking forward to is, as this is pushed from a federal level, that locally we don't let it creep back in. Mm-hmm. That's why the MAGA hats, right?
Yeah. That
idea. Now, MAGA doesn't represent everything, but it is a statement. And if I have to go to a restaurant and I have to see two guys sitting on each other's laps, I try to get my family out of there, and I have to hear people talking about trans ideology and a dude wearing a dress. That's what I've had to see. Yeah. Guess what? It's getting displaced.
Yeah.
It's time to push it out and don't let it back in.
Yeah.
That's where I'm at. That's what I'm excited about.
So real quick, I think that the trans stuff was a big part of why we saw this massive move. And I actually was listening to something yesterday where they're talking about Trump did Kamala wanted to do a trans surgeries for undocumented immigrants who are in custody.
What is that? I forget.
I don't know, but she was like for that, and he ran an advertisement saying like, "Hey, she's for them, I'm for us," and
she's for they them.
Yeah, she's for they them, and I'm for us. And he put it on it was like a really low market late at night. They tested it and it did really well, and then they started pumping it in actual big markets, because the it's just obvious to the average human being that is a wicked thing to do. Yeah. And it's so I think that is a huge part of what the expectation of what Trump is going to restore some kind of normalcy. And then part of being a part of a big organization, one of the main ways that they get people to enforce certain things like laws protecting minors, that kind of stuff, is they just allow people to be sued. And then your insurance company says, hey, you have to change this because we insure you for lawsuits. And so we're going to require these different things from you. That's the way that they get big organizations to change. And if these hospitals have protections that they cannot be sued for doing gender reassignment surgeries on minors, that's how you change that. Yeah. Is they will not, if you just allow them to be sued, that will disappear. It will go away.
Hit their dollar.
Yeah.
One of the things I'm excited about is there are so many accusations going on about Trump and what he's going to do. And I'm thinking of 1 Peter 3:9, do not repay evil for evil. And, they tried bankrupting him. They tried seizing all of his property. They tried putting him in jail. Yeah. They tried killing him twice. And so from a worldly perspective, eye for an eye, Trump, when he gets into power, could, from a worldly perspective, repay evil for evil and get all of his enemies and shut people down and use the power that he has. But it's going to be a test of his character to say, what is he going to do? Is he going to do that, or is he going to dismantle the mechanisms to for people to abuse the power in the future?
Yeah.
And so that's what I'm looking forward to say, hey, Trump, prove them wrong. Show that you are a righteous leader, and dismantle the things that were used to persecute you, so it doesn't happen to someone in the future.
And I think
Trump is, by all accounts, he can be petty. Right. He's on Twitter snapping back at Steph Curry and all these celebrities, but that's very superficial. It is a lot deeper test of character.
I think his persona can be petty, but his policies I haven't seen be petty or vindictive.
I completely agree.
We've been saying it for years. The persona of Trump, we have issues with it. The policies of Trump, they're pretty good.
And here's something to keep your eye on, because I think they're going to accuse him of doing this, and it's not going to be. My confidence is that Trump is not going to be vindictive. He's not going to go after these people. But what I think he is going to do is I think he is going to pardon a bunch of the J6 people who are wrongly persecuted. We have a guy in our church who was at the rally, who went to the Capitol building. He is going to he's going to have to do 6 months for a misdemeanor of like trespassing on federal property, something like that. That dude should be day one for sure. He should be in the group of people who is the large group. Now, if you beat on somebody, if you hit a cop with a bat, fine, do jail time. Yeah. But if you were just like a person at the Capitol building, a lot of the J6 rioters, I think day one should get pardoned. I think they're going to accuse him of that. I think there's also there's some FBI agents, there's some people who should lose their jobs.
Yeah, a lot of people should lose their jobs.
They wrongly in the Justice Department, in the State Department, they wrongly went after Trump. They wrongly pursued a vindictive, unprecedented lawfare against him. Those people should lose their jobs. They're gonna say that's going after them and being vindictive, and it's not. It's just saying, look, you did a wrong thing. You violated your
code of
oath
ethics.
and your code of ethics, and you don't get to work here anymore. That for sure should happen.
Well, and to your point, an example of his conjecture and how he talks versus his policy, the viral clip where he was debating Hillary Clinton, where he said it's a good thing Donald Trump isn't in charge of the laws of this country, and he goes, "You'd be in jail."
Yeah.
Did he put her in jail?
Right.
And so you have to look at the evidence of it. So 1 Peter 3:9, Trump, prove us right.
Yeah.
I
forward to that.
After the election, I've been thinking a lot, and so I definitely agree. I hope that there's substantial resistance to the trans ideology. I really would look forward to Trump exemplifying that, like a above the pettiness, kind of like intentional, principled execution of what's going to matter. I think for Christians, what's been on my mind a lot is when Jesus says, "Render unto Caesar what is Caesar's," and I think Christians, set aside Republican, all of that, I think Christians need to relearn that or learn it for the first time and understand sphere authority. Because I think as much as I want Trump to execute things, and there's a lot of good stuff, I think Christians need to be a block of people that say, wait, I care that you're Trump, but I don't really care. This is actually not your authority. And that needs to grow. And I want that to grow out of this. I think this is a transformational time with technology, with media, with all of these different things. But I think as we transform, Christians have to dig deep and understand what goes where, right? What belongs to the church, what belongs to the state.
So you didn't finish the line, because he says, render unto Caesar's what is Caesar's and God's what is God's. So knowing what is Caesar's and what is God's is, I think, the important part in that text. And I think that's where it brings me to the thing that I'm the most excited about, and I just think is the most obvious one that is going to happen, which is, we've talked a lot in here about limited government. We wish the government didn't have as much influence over our lives. And I think there's certain things like the First Amendment is upheld and valued, right? So like when we go online, we're not going to be ratioed, or we're not ratioed, but we're not going to be shadow banned, or we're not going to, the algorithm. Now this is private companies largely, but we're not going to have the okay that our voices are going to be minimized and other voices are going to be shouted and promoted. I think that protecting our ability, we're not going to get kicked off places, for being able to say things that are obviously true, or that we think are right, or we strongly held beliefs. So I think that one, and then I think protection of religious liberties. I think that all what we want is for you to unhandcuff us, like let us fight with both hands, like even the playing field a little bit. And I think, every time you talk about religious liberties really only affect areas where there's other liberties that are in conflict with it, right? And so you think about things like the Colorado cake baker, like can he not bake a cake for a gay wedding? Does he? Or there's two terms ago in the Supreme Court, there was a guy who makes websites, and they wanted to make a gay website for a gay event, and he didn't want to do it, right? And they both upheld both those times that he doesn't have to, right? But it was upheld after lower courts had ruled that he does have to, right? Yeah. So there's all this, are we gonna force Christian hospitals to do abortions, or Christian doctors to do abortions, or whatever the different situations are? And so that idea of religious liberties being protected is all it is saying is like, don't force us to do what violates our conscience. And if I think those two things, allow us to speak freely and don't force us to do things, just levels the playing field and allows us to do what we feel like God's called us to do. Like we want to build the kingdom. We want to proclaim the gospel. We want to, raise our families the way we see fit. We want all these kinds of things that are just leave us alone.
Yeah.
And I think that's very likely to happen under Trump, or at least those values are not going to be eroded in the same way they have been under.
There's one other thing that I have been thinking about quite a bit is I in this moment I am encouraged, and I see this as a step in the right direction of success. But I think there's a pattern from the Old Testament around how the kings of Israel and Judah went, and I think there would be poor leadership, and the people would suffer. The people would get that oppressive and punishment because of the leadership. Then there would be good leadership, not as much, but there would be times of good leadership, but it wouldn't stick. And I think that is also something that I think for Christians, we can't, again, the thing that the ethos through that is like, we can't rest here. We can't think that this solves the problems. We still have to understand what the Bible wants us to be doing.
Yeah.
And in particular with the kings in the Old Testament, there are no limit to the actual spaces in our culture that need to be pulled down, that need to be brought back in accordance with what's true and good. And that's our work. So I in those two things, I think I'm encouraged, but I'm also like, I think there's a challenge out in front of us. Because if we leave a vacuum, if we say this is a win, good, let's just rest and go back to whatever, making money, doing our thing, that vacuum will be occupied by something. So we have to be intentional about what needs to be torn down, reclaimed, and put right.
I love let me add to that real quick, Spencer, because in the days leading up to the election, I was not feeling good about the way it was going to go. But you start to pray and you're like, wait a minute, no matter which way the presidency goes, whether Kamala wins or Kamala or Trump, whatever it is, that doesn't change what I do as a man.
Exactly.
My mission as a Christian man is still the same. And to be steadfast like an oak, and to lead my family, and to defend the weak, and to get up and go to work. So the tactics may change. It may be, I might have to be a little more aggressive or subversive, but you can't just, like you said, put your feet up and kick back like David when he was supposed to be out of war. Mm-hmm. And so to the men out there, whether we win or lose, it does not change who you are. You still have the exact same mindset as before.
But we have won. It's a good thing to celebrate this.
Yes.
But the thing is, I'm excited about this. I'm psyched that Trump won. I think it's going to do a lot of things for our country. That's amazing. But Trump winning doesn't give me the deep joy or purpose in my daily life. I still have responsibilities and things that I need to dig into. I still need to look to God for that kind of sustained joy, no matter what Trump does. Yeah, I think it's something to celebrate, but I do agree that the spheres is...
Yeah, I think and I'm actually preaching on this weekend, and in regards to the election, I think what happened is, you're right. Like, our job is the same whether we live in North Korea or whether we live in the United States of America, right? Like, no matter what, our job is to be faithful to Jesus, to discharge the duties that he's given us in the manner in which he's called us to be obedient to his commandments and to follow him. The difference is, though, I think that what I look at this is that God has opened a door for us.
Yeah.
Well, so this election, this victory, this win was a door that got opened to us, and now we got to walk through the door. Yeah. Like, now it's like I said earlier, it's like the playing field has gotten evened a little bit, and now the job is for us to play the game, for us to fight the fight, for us to get after it. And I think that there's a test in here, right? Like, we could just be the victory. Oh, great, we did it. And I kind of likened it to that scene in Shawshank Redemption where Andy Dufresne is in there, and he's been writing letters to the State Department of Library to try to get them to give him books. He committed to writing a letter a week. And finally, after like a couple of years, they send him like 50 boxes of books, and they're like, hey, please stop writing us. Like, leave us alone now. And they asked him what he's going to do. He's like, now I'm writing 2 letters a week, right? So, like, we've been working hard, I think, on this election. I know we've been supporting people, giving money, like doing different things politically. And again, just real quick, if you've been watching this podcast, this is not a political podcast. Like, we're going to talk about all the things of the kingdom and that have to do with God and him. But just in this last couple months, we've been doing a lot of political stuff because this is where there's a fight right now, and there's a lot of opportunity to speak into it and speak truth into it. But we're going to now, the door has been opened in some ways, and now I plan on kicking down the door and doubling down our efforts and working hard at building God's kingdom, speaking to God's people, speaking truth, pulling down strongholds and every high thing that exalts itself against the name of God, and raising the flag that Jesus is King and that He's going to rule the world and us and all that's in it, and that we should bow our knee and serve Him and follow Him, and that's what a good nation would do. That's what good men do. That's what good families do. And so now it's about time to get to work. God bless you guys. Thanks for watching the Unyielding podcast. We'll see you next time.